Hello guys, this is BSJ back with another hero guide, and this time we're going to be talking about the Slardar of the Dars, as voted for on the 50,000 subscribers, and every 5,000 YouTube subscribers I will be doing a new hero guide. We're actually almost at 55,000 already, but I've been pretty busy, so you guys can shut the hell up. Actually, thanks for, subscribing to the channel, and this is my way of rewarding or appreciating your guys' support.
Banana slam jam.
The Slardar, for the most part, he's an offlaner. You know, we've seen a bit of 5 position, a bit of 4 position. We've also seen Mason lose on the 1 position. But for the most part, he's an offlaner. And the reason why Slardar is an offlaner is because his entire kit is about enabling other people to do their damage. He's all about disable, he's all about chase, he's all about that minus armor. So what Slardar basically does as a hero is that he takes any physical damage dealing hero in the game and suddenly makes them just do a shit ton more damage. And while Slardar's kit on paper does a lot of damage, you have to imagine that any hero in the carry role with a crit or built-in attack speed or anything like that will always dish out more damage than Slardar, period. And that's why Slardar, in my opinion, can never really be a carry, and that's why he's always been more of a utility hero. The weird thing about Slardar, though, is that he's a utility hero that's kit alone is utility. And what I mean by that is that he has a stun, and an AoE, it's not very long, but it's a stun. He has a bash, that's a guaranteed stun every 4 hits. And he also has a bajillion minus armor. So Slardar's kit alone is what makes him utility. A lot of time when you think of utility heroes, you think of like Darkseers and Underlords. And these heroes oftentimes buy a lot of aura items. You know, they'll buy the greaves, they'll buy the pipes, etc. And that's because their kits kind of just they operate on their own. What I mean by that is without any items, Darkseer can Ion Shell you, Surge you, he can Vacuum Wall. Sometimes he needs a Blink, but that's about it. On the other case, Slardar is a hero that needs to itemize purely for himself. And any item he does buy to benefit the team is because he's making himself stronger, which then makes his teammates stronger. So we're talking about drums can be sometimes a team fight item or item he can buy, Vlad's, medallion, but all of this stems from what he needs, because you can't just go pipe or greaves on Slardar, because attack speed benefits his bash, mobility benefits his positioning for crush, and his ability to get his ultimate off as well. So it's a weird hero in that regard, because his entire kit is about buffing up his team, but he doesn't do it with any items. He's a very selfish buff to the rest of his team. So I want you guys to understand that as an offlane hero on Slardar, the way you play the game is about enabling your teammates, but the way you itemize is about enabling your own hero to do it. Vlad's is an item that you can look to go for Rosh. Drums is an item you can look to skirmish with in the mid game. If you want to be a frontliner on Slardar, you need an Ags. Simply put, you need an Ags. And the way Slardar works is, I ask myself, if I blink in, am I just gonna die? And if the answer is yes, then I don't like to go blink. I like to go Ags or BKB, whichever one makes me more survivable, and then blink. Because on Slardar, the worst thing you can do is itemize to go in, because the hero is surprisingly squishy if he can't move. He's very fast and very nimble, but if he gets locked down at all, he does tend to get bursted. A lot of people don't realize that Slardar has the highest base armor of any strength hero in the entire game of Dota. This hero is very tanky in the laning stage, effective HP-wise, but he needs levels to come online, even more so why he's an offlaner. So we're going to go ahead and go from the beginning of the game for Slardar. We're just going to lay it out in exactly what I like and benefit on Slardar. So in the early lane, I almost always buy a Quelling, and I always go for trading items. That's almost always the case. I like Slardar against supports that are all about trading. Chen, Warlock, Enchantress, Keeper of the Light, I don't like him against supports that are either super tanky, like Ogre, or supports that kill you, something like a Lich, something like an Oracle in lane. These high nuke, high damage, high tankiness supports I don't like laning Slardar against. Because Slardar, he will always win the kill battle if he's allowed to hit you. And the only thing that stops Slardar from hitting you is you hitting him with nukes. There's really no sustain lanes that can out-sustain Slardar. Eventually, he's going to crush you, literally, with his second skill. The way I look at Slardar is he is one of the prime examples of an offlaner that wants the lane near his own tower. The reason why he's not always a mid laner, sometimes he's been played mid, is because he's probably the highest beneficiary of any hero in the entire game for chase distance. He wants to be able to chase you. What makes Slardar strong is that if you're half health and you try to man up on a Slardar and you're away from your own tower, suddenly you get bashed, then you get stunned, then by the time you're ready to move again, you're getting bashed again. And that's what makes Slardar so scary, is threatening to kill you from about half health. And it makes it so if they can't hit you, it's like this, it's this barrier, or it's this like fine line where they can either hit you and you can't hit them, or they are so afraid of you that they can't hit you at all, which in that case you don't really need sustain. So the carries that he's bad against, since all of his damage is physical, including his crush as well as his bash, are heroes with high armor and the ability to make it difficult to hit them. Terrorblade, Troll Warlord, Naga Siren, any illusion heroes, super annoying for Slardar, because Slardar is all single target physical damage. So Naga, PL, Terrorblade, and Troll Warlord and Drow are the ones that come to mind the most. On the other hand, he's very good against single target heroes that have lower base armor. For example, Anti-Mage owns the shit out of Anti-Mage. You're having trouble with Anti-Mage, pick Slardar. We're talking about Lifestealer. We're talking about Faceless Void. We're talking about, Monkey King PA. Monkey King can be a bit scary, but, if you're allowed to go on him, it's still just scary for him. Juggernaut. All of these single target heroes that when amped just kind of melt. And those are the heroes I love picking Slardar against. Some of the weaknesses of Slardar is that he has no wave clear and no D-push. So I really try to lean away from picking Slardar in lineups where we have absolutely none of that, and the opponent threatens a lot of that. That's very important, because he has all the tools he needs to pick people off, but if they're just split pushing you to death and you have none of your lanes pushed, Slardar basically finds himself running around the map, not being able to do anything about it. So level 1, I either take my stun or my bash. And a lot of that has to do with whether or not we can secure range creeps, because your stun can be used for that, or whether or not I believe I'm actually going to be allowed to hit the creep wave without taking a lot of damage. Because if I'm allowed to hit the creep wave, I love to set up my bashes. That's the most important part of Slardar. I'm going to go and pull up a replay here. So since Anti-Mage is a hero I told you to pick Slardar into, in this specific matchup, I take Crush level 1, because I try to use all of my mana before Anti-Mage can burn it, because he also only does damage if you have mana. But once I get level 2, let's fast forward to that. Once I get level 2, I try to spend as much time as possible hitting things. I want to build up those bashes, those bash charges. So bash, there, hit, and then I threaten the bash. Bash, hit, 3 hits, and then look to threaten the bash. You don't always have to get the bash, but notice how a good Slardar player will always get that third proc, and then look to walk at the guy. And if the guy hits you back, you bash him. If he walks away, you effectively zone him away. Slardar doesn't trade all that well consistently, but if you're only looking to trade every time you're at 2 or 3 bash hits, that's when you're one of the most effective trading heroes in the game, because your bash is a stun as well as a bonus 50 damage level 1. If I don't need sprint level 3, I absolutely take bash a second point in bash. Doubles the damage, and at the end of the day, it's free. One of the reasons he's so good against Anti-Mage is because his main source of trading doesn't require mana. So that's why he's so good against Anti-Mage. But that's a really important aspect of laning a Slardar. And pretty much I always just need my hero to be high enough health to not be afraid to hit people. No matter how much sustain I need to bring, that's what I'm going to bring. And if I'm against these melee heroes, I'm going to go Bracer and Glove of Haste first, as you see here. These are the type of items I'll go, because I know I'm going to be allowed to play on the creep wave. I just need to attack faster, and I need to have more sustain, and I need to do more damage. If I'm against heroes that I am not afraid of necessarily about trading, but I want to chase them down, I'll go for the early movement speed items. Windlace, super value, looking at that boots. I almost always go treads on Slardar. Treads are the luxury item. They're the item you'd rather have. Phase are an option, but because you benefit so much from attack speed when it comes to your bash procs, I love going for treads. At least in the current patch right now. Once you're level 4, I pretty much always have 1 point in all 3 skills. And because all 3 of his skills are very good value points, I pretty much always leave his stun at level 1. It is a 1-second stun, no matter what level it is. And all you really benefit is more slow and more damage. But if you compare that to the mobility you gain from sprint and the free damage you gain from bash, I almost always go 4-1-4. In perfect games, I'll max bash. In not so perfect games, I'll start to max sprint. But honestly, it really boils down to how much I plan to be running around the map. If my laning stage is over relatively early, I'll start maxing out that sprint. If I feel like I'm going to be trading a lot and hitting a lot of creeps in my lane, I am going to be maxing the bash. So the thing about Slardar offlane is he's an offlaner that doesn't pressure towers at all. That's really important. He pressures towers virtually nada. But what he does create is somewhat similar to Doom, is this Deadlane. Once he gets level 6, most carries in the game have no desire to lane against you. Absolutely no desire. Because most carries, when they lose 10 armor, when you're level 6, can't trade at all, and they also die to a gank. So he creates this scenario where the opponent no longer wants to be in his lane. So a real cool example of this is that if you're a carry playing with a Slardar, we're going to fast forward to when my carry rotates, most of the time the opponent won't fuck with it. And what I mean by that is they're afraid, they have to contest the push with a lot of heroes. So I'm going to show you what I mean here. So my troll goes bottom, and I walk bottom to threaten. But most of the time, the carries just have to leave. And this is what you want to do as Slardar. You want to represent this threat on the map in the mid game. Notice how my troll's pushing bottom, and I'm like, if they go contest my troll, they're going to get fucked. So I'm going to go walk and contest somewhere else and until they contest my teammates. Because Slardar's not this flash farmer, and he relies mostly on walking around the map, I love him in games where he can kind of just walk anywhere he wants. Look at the opponent team. Very few stuns. Very hard to catch me until Axe gets a blink. So I can kind of just walk freely, and I love that. And note that he does get passive bonus movement speed walking through the river, so it's very easy for him to transition from one lane to the other. But it's always about this constant threat, because you are annoying to the enemy carry, and you make your carry do a shit ton of damage. And notice how even if this doesn't work, we're just bodying the opponent carry. We're not doing anything fancy. Slardar doesn't always have to be a kill hero. He can be this annoyance of a hero. The weird thing about Slardar, since he doesn't pressure towers, is your tower that you're choosing to pressure is all about which heroes on your team pressure towers. So if my troll was mid, I'd be pressuring mid. If my troll's bottom, I'm pressuring bottom. If my troll doesn't rotate at all, then I'm just going to play the lane like it's a dead lane, but not actually... I mean, I'm going to try to kill the tower, but I just kill it so slowly. So once you get the treads, maybe a wand and a bracer, you go either drums, Vlads, Ags, Midas, or a blink. Midas implies that you can do exactly what I'm doing here, where you're playing hyper-aggressive, even though you bought a Midas. If you can't do that, do not buy a Midas, please, for the love of God. But if you can do this while buying a Midas, it's super nice, because Midas 40 attack speed is super nice for Slardar, and he usually doesn't farm very much past this stage in the game. Drums means you know, that extra movement speed for your team, and your attack speed secures you kills. The Vlads is more about the sustain and the Rosh for your team, and the blink is just that extra bit of reach, and you're not necessarily afraid of blinking in. You're not afraid of the opponent turning the fight on you. And the Ags is like the luxury version. It's like the Midas, but instead of making it so you're being a bit greedier for gold, you're being greedy for yourself. Because Slardar Ags is probably the single most game-changing item on any offlaner in the game. Not accounting a blink dagger, like not accounting the hero's ability to initiate. Slardar's Ags is broken. The only limiting factor for Slardar is that he doesn't farm very fast. But if you're having a very good start, then Slardar Ags is terrifying. For those of you who don't know, the puddle on his Ags, you get 35 HP regen, you get 12 armor, and you get 40% status resistance. It's insane. It solves all of his issues. So Slardar is absolutely terrifying if you can get that early Ags. But then at some point, you're going to want that blink. That's the big thing about Slardar. You do want that blink. And if you're having a rough game as Slardar, you pretty much become a support that runs around the map amping people. This is a really good game for Slardar, but I do want to be clear, if you pick Slardar in a rough game, you pretty much become poverty. Like, this hero without a good start has absolutely no farm. Like, he will never get farm unless he's killing people. That's his only way back in the game. So with that in mind, I really want you to realize that his matchup against the support is really important. I usually only pick Slardar if I see Warlock as support and I think they're going to pick Spectre. Any carry that doesn't really kill me or trade very well with me. If I'm afraid they're going to pick Troll Warlord or Terrorblade or any of the sorts or Drow, I just don't want to pick Slardar, man. The hero's day and night different when you lose your lane as compared to having a good start. You don't have to have a perfect start, but Slardar can absolutely feed, and it's really important you don't overplay the hero level 1. I know we're level 6 in this replay, but I don't want you to overplay your hero level 1. You'll be surprised how many games of Slardar I've absolutely chucked into the dumpster because level 1, I tried to make shit happen, and the hero's just way stronger at level 2 than he is at level 1. I'm not saying to play like a total wimp level 1, but I do want you to realize the hero is deceptively weak level 1. And once you get to like level 4 or 5, if you're on even terms with the opponent's Offlaner, it's so easy to play Dota for this hero. And that's the point of fragility we're looking to dodge on Slardar. Slardar is all about weaving in and out of fights. That's what he is. He's like the offlane version of Slark. Yeah, they're both fish heroes, and they both have the word Slar in their name. But it's because they're so much about disengaging, re-engaging, and capitalizing on their hyper-mobility. You know, Slark has Pounce, Slardar has Sprint, right? And Slardar, you want to be amping targets at all times because it's a 5-second cooldown, and it's all about knowing what targets need to be amped, and the heroes that remove amp are the hardest ones for Slardar to play against. Abaddon, most notably, because he removes it on the lowest cooldown. Omni Knight can be super annoying, and Legion in certain games can be super annoying as well. Oracle as support, I hate picking Slardar into. It's a 5 that can purge your amp with just his first ability or his his ultimate. Because that's what Slardar is. His backup plan is to be minus 10, 15, 20 armor for the opponent. That's what his backup plan is. His regular plan includes that as well, but if you have a rough start, that is what you'll become. You are all about making it so your carry out-carries their carry, because you are effectively removing 1 or 2 items from the opponent carry because he just misses 20 armor and gets disabled a lot. So I want you guys to think like that when it comes to itemization, when it comes to play. It's all about pissing the opponent carry off. That is all you're doing. You are Doom, but instead of making them not be able to cast spells, you make it so they die in 3 hits. That is what Slardar does. He loves being paired with PA. He loves being paired with Troll Warlord, Drow, like mid SFs for minus armor strats. He loves being paired with Terrorblades, any hard right clickers. But the ones that are especially good with Slardar are the ones that clear waves. So the problem if you pick like Ricky, for instance, even though he's very high physical damage, is you have heroes that don't want to play on map. So with Slardar, since you're usually playing off map, unless you're going for Ags, that is the build you go for if you have to play on map. What I mean is if you're showing on creep waves a lot, is that you want these carries that play on map. That's really important. Like Terrorblade shows in lanes all the time. Lifestealer shows in lanes all the time. Those are the heroes you want on your team, ideally speaking, because not only do they benefit from your ultimate, but they also synergize very well with the way you play the map. Always itemize to look to get Roche. Sometimes you need the sustain, sometimes you can get that medallion. Items to consider are AC, Solar Crest, Shadow Blade for that extra mobility if you absolutely need it, MKB, Hyper late game if you are needed to bring somebody down. Halberd is worth considering, but if we're talking about status resistance, you usually go for the Ag Scepter. And honestly, Slardar doesn't have too much diversity in his item pool, because Blink is almost always great. Ags, if you have the money, is almost always great. Ags or BKB or both are almost always in your kit. AC, since he's minus armor and attack speed. Those are the dream items. Those are the ideal items for Slardar. Yeah, we see some random items I've plugged in there. But I sometimes buy a value cloak. But I will warn you that if you're buying pipe on Slardar, you better be desperate. If you've played Slardar, you may understand this. For whatever reason, buying unselfish items for your team, you just can't play your hero. It feels so ass to buy Greaves or pipe or mech or anything like that on this hero. Even if your team needs it, it's not your job to build it, my friend. That is pretty much how I look at Slardar. And I believe as an offlaner, there are heroes in our games that you have to know to play selfishly. And on Slardar, you are playing unselfishly by playing selfishly. Let's be very clear about that. Because at the end of the day, if you're blinking in, stunning, and amping people, that is the most use you will ever be to your team, way more than buying aura items. When it comes to his talents, most games I like to take the damage, but if I absolutely need the sustain, I'll take the health regen. I'd say normal games, I take the health at level 15, but if I'm just feeling unkillable anyways, I'll take the bash damage. I almost always take the 4 corrosive haze armor, but if I'm actually building like Ag's AC, I wouldn't be opposed to getting the lifesteal. And then level 25, you pretty much always take the undispellable. For corrosive haze, because really the only way to counter Slardar is Lotus Orbs, and Mantas, and all these other ways of removing corrosive haze. So making it so you can't dispel it anymore pretty much just solidifies this hero being able to scale into the late game. This talent has made a big difference for his late game prowess. So for people who never watched my minus armor versus armor video, minus armor does not counter armor. Armor counters minus armor. So, for lack of better explanation, maybe my editor can link that for you guys. Slardar is very good against heroes with less than 20 armor. Because the closer they are to 0 armor, the more impactful minus armor amp is. So if you're against Slardar, you better max out those armor items. You better see some Greaves. You better see a Medallion. You better see an AC. You better see a Shiva's, a Lotus. It's very important to be building armor or ways of removing corrosive haze, which is effectively armor when we're dealing with Slardar. So when you're Slardar, thinking about these heroes that naturally build those items are the ones you're bad against. Heroes that naturally gain armor, like Terrorblade, like Morphling, Slardar can struggle with when the game gets to like past the first 20 minutes. It can get really hard because taking a hero from 40 armor to 20 is not nearly as detrimental as taking them from 20 armor to 0. And that's why I love playing against heroes like Anti-Mage, because in the mid game I'm removing 10 armor and he's only got 9. And then by the time, because he usually only builds stat items, by the time I'm level 18 with minus 20 armor, he's still only got about 20 armor. So suddenly they're sitting at 0 armor. And that is a huge deal for Slardar. So really think about heroes that don't like building these types of items. Oddly enough, Axe gets armor from his call, but he doesn't like to be hit for more damage. You're effectively negating his call armor. Like, imagine Axe not getting call armor. That's what it feels like to play against Slardar. So offlaners that I generally like to play against Slardar, and I try to avoid picking Slardar into, are ones that make it hard to go in. Heroes like Underlord, for instance, can be super annoying. Venomancer can be super annoying. Heroes that kind of like lay shit down on the ground, have magic damage nukes, and are really hard to enter the fight against. Mars is another example. Those are the heroes that it's really hard for Slardar to function against. High lockdown, high magic burst, and heroes that make it hard to enter the fight. So when I'm looking to pick Slardar, or if I'm against Slardar, I think it's just as important for you guys to understand if you're against the hero, that's what I love to pick. It is super important, by the way, that when you're running around the map, to do your best to charge up your bash. Seems simple, but it's really nice if you can blink on somebody or run at somebody, bash them, then stun them, because since then you've already hit them twice again, and then you'll probably be able to bash them again. So it's really big deal that you prep your bashes when running around the map. You can use jungle camps, you can use lane creeps, but like right now I've only got 2, but most of the time I try to run around with, as often as possible, I try to run around with 3 bashes. If I'm about to finish a jungle camp and the creep's 1 hit away from dying and I have 3 bash charges, I will slither and crush that shit. This hero is all about consistent growth, meaning you want to consistently have this power spike be like this. And then what you want is you want to play where you're going like this, and then eventually you're taking a chill pill right before like Ags or BKB or Blink, and then once you hit that, you just run at people. Because the idea behind Slardar is he's never going to outfarm the opponent because he just doesn't farm. But what he can do is make them so scared of dying that you just pummel them into submission, and that even though you're farming more than they are, it's because they're not farming at all, not because your hero is farming fast. So that's the way you need to envision Slardar's timings, in my opinion. And ideally, he wants to avoid 5v5s. It doesn't mean you can't fight 5v5, but the hero's entire kit is predicated on killing one hero at a time very fast. His AoE stun is relatively underwhelming, and I think it's really important to play around his low cooldown disables and single target massive amounts of damage. Rosh is always on the table for Slardar. One of the best Roshing offlaners in the entire game, always on the table. When it comes to tower pressure and other objectives, it is completely dependent upon the timing of your teammates. So, really high level understanding of Dota when it comes to Slardar is building the items that enable your other teammates to take objectives. If you're thinking your team needs to hit a timing, needs to take an objective, you're buying items that either help them sustain, you initiate for them, whatever it takes for them to be able to take the objective, because you are not the one that does it. You might be a frontline tank to go high ground, but that's only if you have an Ag Scepter. And instead of really being the building damage, you're more so the guy that just stands in front and says, "Come at me, bro," with my status resistance, armor, and health regen. What about Echo Saber? So people will ask about items on Slardar. Like Echo Saber. Like, Daedalus. Desolator. That implies you're doing the damage. Slardar does not deal the damage. He makes the rest of his team deal a shit ton of damage. Slardar will never be your damage dealer. Period. Your kit alone does plenty of damage. You need to build to live and hit people. You don't need to build to do more damage. Items like Echo Saber, Deso are a complete bait. Please do not build them. It is trash. Somebody said Vanguard for Slardar. The thing about Slardar is he never gets right-clicked. So when it comes to your survivability items, they're either sustain or mobility. You don't get right-clicked as Slardar, because if the guy's right-clicking you, he's probably fucking dead, right? Like, that's how Slardar works. He gets kited and nuked. And if he's getting right-clicked, he's getting stunned. And Vanguard is just underwhelming, in my opinion, on Slardar. It does absolutely nothing for the hero's farming speed. It's basically a worse version of Ags, right? Yes, it's only half the gold, but it's just a worse version of Ags. Slardar's issues are that he has no mobility other than sprint, he has no lane clear, and he has no tower pressure. And so he needs to build to do those things. Not necessarily lane clear, but he needs to build to help his team take objectives. He needs to build to initiate fights. He needs to build to tank in a way that is meaningful. And Slardar tanking damage is nothing like a Bristle, right? Heroes like Bristle go Vanguard, because while you're killing them, they're killing you. Slardar actually needs to be using his spells and hitting people. I already said it once, I'll say it again. Any item like Crimson, Pipe, Mech are a complete and utter bait on this hero, and the only time you build them is when your team absolutely needs them. And at that point, I wish you hadn't picked Slardar. But that doesn't mean you can't build them. But virtually never. So people say Force Staff as a potential item. The whole thing about Slardar is that he stands his ground, and a lot of the items you build are to stand your ground. There are games where you're just against immense amount of damage, maybe a lot of burst from heroes like AA in the support role, or, heroes like Drow or Terrorblade that just shred you if you ever get caught. And in those cases, if you're going to blink in and stun, I think items like Yules and Ghost Scepter are completely reasonable. Because your idea is to be able to blink stun people and then live. So a lot of time, the ideal way is BKB and Axe, right? That makes sense, because those items tank you up a lot, and it makes it so that you can stand your ground. But some games, no matter what you build, you're not going to stand your ground. And in that case, you're going to build damage evasion items. Force Staff is okay, but I think Yule Scepter and Ghost Scepter would be higher on the priority list for me. But if they had like this combo, like Ancient Apparition would come to mind a lot, Clockwork, where not only you could benefit from the Force Staff, but one of your teammates, I wouldn't hate it. But those are the type of items on Slardar I would really only build if I absolutely had to. Because the items like Vlad's, Drums, Blink, Midas, Ags, BKB are just so good on the hero that it takes a very specific situation to make you want to go any other direction. So I hope you guys enjoyed this guide on Slardar, and every 5,000 YouTube subscribers I will be doing more, and I'll try to be leaning towards offlane guides as we move forward, since I've been playing a lot more offlane. Or please let me know in the comments what you think about the video. I tried to include a bit of an example here for the laning stage. The game was a stomp, and I more so like to theorycraft things, because if I give you specific examples, I'm worried that you'll try to interpret the specific example rather than my actual, what I'm trying to teach you guys. So please let me know more about the video. Also like it if you like it, because that tells me I'm doing a good job. If I'm not doing a good job, you can let me know. Thanks for watching.